Good morning, everyone. Welcome to DestiCon, the virtual experience. This is day one of 2 days of amazing content from fresh faces and legends that you know in the industry. My name is Jennifer Barbee. I am co-owner and creator of DestiCon. Today, I have a really special guest on the legend side of people in the industry, and it's Michael Gehrisch. Hey, Michael, how are you?
Hi, Jennifer. Good morning. I know about the legend, but I'm still here. You know,
Hey, that's all any of us can say these days, right?
I guess so.
Well, wonderful. Well, I just want to go through a couple of housekeeping things and we'll go into a short talk before we get into the rest of our content this morning. Really great sessions coming up. This is Excel Events. We love this platform for our live experiences. If you're in the lobby page, you can see your sessions coming up. You can join others should be on the right side of your screen. You'll see chat where you can talk to anybody in the chat room publicly. There's also Q&A. If you've got a question, please use the Q&A to post it. If we answer it live, we'll check that off. Or you can send questions privately as well. That's for all sessions all day long. Awesome. Well, we're going to get into my job this morning is to get us stretched out. We're going to stretch our minds just a little bit so that we're all ready for this amazing content that's happening today. So first, let's talk about what a disruptor is. If you've seen a lot of our marketing around this, we've used the term disruptor, which is DEST. For us, that doesn't mean somebody who's just causing chaos, right? Everything is a destination in our tourism industry. Whether you're a short-term rental, that's an encapsulated experience. Everything really is a destination. So being a responsible disruptor, which I think Michael and I have been in our careers, is about pushing the envelope, accepting change, looking at what change is coming up, working through those opportunities, and then coming up with successful outcomes. So we're going to talk a little bit about change everything. And I just want to say everyone in here now is welcome to the tribe. Welcome to the disruptors. We'll get jackets. Okay, so when change comes, usually it's not a happy thing for a lot of people. You know, when the change hits the fan and we feel like our butt's on the line, that's when we're really upset and kind of cranky about things. But we've come out of the pandemic, we've come out of recessions, we've had, lots of challenges in the tourism industry, and just showing how strong we are in the tourism industry. I just want to remind us of the kinds of mindset, the kinds of changes that may come at us and how we deal with that. So really, it's a lot about that mindset and winning thoughts. A responsible disruptor keeps their mind positive. My husband likes to say I have toxic positivity because I am so on what's the opportunity, what's the silver lining? How can I turn this to my advantage? So really the greatest victory isn't winning against others as a competition. It's really winning against the self. Another popular term that happened in the last couple of years, especially for female entrepreneurs, is imposter syndrome, like not feeling in our head it's good enough. And that's something we also have to change. Is anything that you want to do is totally possible for you, especially as you listen to our speakers as throughout the day goes. You may hear yourself saying to yourself, well, I don't know if my board would like that, or I may not be able to do that. But getting your mindset right is super important in terms of affecting positive disrupting change. Getting your head in the game. Difficulties help us grow. If we weren't having any difficulties, then we couldn't possibly move to the next level. We fell down a lot when we learned how to walk. So it's important to look at difficulties as an opportunity, knowing that whatever desired outcome you want is possible. Looking at yourself in the story and where your place is in the story is also really calming and very powerful. Disconnecting from stories told to us, things that we may be carrying in terms of baggage. Oh, I can't do that. I wasn't athletic in high school, so I can't possibly do a good program to get my health and all that up. Getting those out, getting your head super straight for what you need to do this year for your destinations, for your travel businesses. It's really important to do that. So now we'll go into our types of change or chance, as we end up being a lot of times. Again, in the industry, we don't necessarily want a lot of the change that we've gotten in the last couple of years, and some of that's chance, but how do we deal with that? So there's three types of change, really. Slow change is sometimes not slow also. The evolution of how we travel was a nice long, okay, this is how leisure people travel. This is how meeting planners book. was a nice, long, easy path. A couple of years ago, 2020, we found that evolution of how we travel a huge change. So some of our slow change does get disrupted quite a bit. But really, in terms of travelers' mindsets, we still have a slower adoption rate than immediacy, unless we have a crisis. We look at trends that don't seem too threatening. Tiny tech steps is a slow change there. And then the changing of trends, your audience and supply. Those are changing, but again, in terms of pace, that's going to be a little slower than the quicker piece of it. So the experience economy, the cultivated experience has been really a slower trend that's been going on for years, decades actually. Obviously, the internet was a huge tectonic change at one point, but it's become a slower change in terms of what destinations use as their tool set or their tech deck, what short-term rentals may use and how they book themselves and how they get guests in. Social media changing. Well, Facebook changes every day, but in terms of the core and what you want to think of when you think of changes, you want to think of the core of that change. And is it really, something that's going to expire very quickly, or if it's going to go long? Social media has been, again, in place for a couple of decades. We all remember MySpace Tom before Facebook and the rest. The DMO place and DMO relevancy has been a slow and then a up and down kind of tectonic change. And I'm going to throw a question to Michael on that in just a second. Obviously, our lodging product has really started to change, and the pandemic brought that about too, which is why you're going to find some amazing short-term rental content from some leaders in the industry over there, because that really saved our rear end in a lot of destinations during the pandemic were the short-term rentals. So the lodging products changed. The hotels are really trying to change their lodging product, because basically right now you're still staying in the same hotel room, the same design from the 1950s. So lodging partners are getting much more aggressive about innovation in that space. And the meetings market is a pretty predictable slow change as well. But Michael, I want to throw you a question really quick on the DMO place and the changing role of the DMOs. Talk to us just a little bit. Well, first off, give us a little intro to who you are and where you come from.
Oh, thanks for having me, Jen. And you guys put together a great program online today, and I'm happy to be participating in it as well. I got involved in the hotel business at an early age. Went through college, went to work for Marriott, ended up in Washington, D.C., at which time I joined the American Hotel and Lodging Association as their chief financial officer and operating officer. Was there 10 years, left, did an online gig in the Silicon Valley company called WorldRes. At the time, it was cutting edge because we were streaming content and reservations over line. I mean, that was a big deal.
Wow, that's a big deal then.
So it's slow, but that has slowed down to the point where people expect it too. So having gone through that, and we sold the company, and I went back to Washington for 15 years to represent the DMO community, which was a great experience when I was there in Washington.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's when we met. When you were in.
So, yeah.
We won't date ourselves, but that was a little bit ago.
Right. Well, I think one of the things you mentioned from a slow march, if you will, and the items you highlighted are very important, because some things either don't change completely or they're slow to change. And I think, certainly I always looked at from a DMO role standpoint is they were almost like a franchise, because their franchise were based on their room tax district and where they collect the money from. Mm-hmm. So they had a responsibility to their constituents and visitors in that particular area. And I see the positioning of the DMOs even more important as we move forward, even though it might go a little less slow than rapidly, I would think.
Right. I think, and what's great about, again, change that we didn't necessarily expect, but we got saddled with, was when, the pandemic and all that happened, the DMOs did step up so well to a new role that they never had to deal with before, which is their own community, their own residents.
Absolutely.
I love that that's continuing. And anybody who's listening, make sure to attend Timothy Bush's session at the end of the day today from Lake Charles. He's doing an amazing job with that DMO of layering in and continuing to use community support as part of their core values and their core strategy. So then we have another kind of change, the kind of change we really don't like. Oh, shucks. It's emergency change, when crisis just comes out of nowhere, where there's tectonic changes. Obviously, we know a lot about this right now, coming out of the pandemic. When something goes viral, not in a good way, that becomes a quick emergency to deal with. Obviously, weather can be a real issue of emergency in a lot of situations. And then changes that mean that your world has changed. And that just may mean, you know, the structure of, let's say, your destination or your tourism business is threatened or changes in some way. Then it's who moved my cheese. And what we have to do then is not try to control the first thing that you feel, which is that adrenaline rush, that crazy talk. Don't try to control your feelings. Let it kind of flow through and start to think. We'll talk about some plans here in a minute about how we deal with these changes. But this is the kind of change. This is the change that nobody wants, that just broadsides us on the middle of a Tuesday. And then we have opportunity, which is my very favorite kind of change, right?
I like that.
The opportunity. And a couple of things you got to think about when there's opportunity and why people, you know, don't take advantage of opportunity. There's a great story that one of my mentors, Les Brown, tells, which is, you know, he's walking by a house every day on the way to his grandma's, and there's a dog on the porch, and the dog's whining. He's whining, and he goes by every day. This dog's just whining. Finally, his owner's outside one day, and Les asks, "What's wrong with the dog? He seems upset." And he said, "Oh, well, he's sitting on a nail." He's like, "Well, why doesn't he move?" And the whole point of that is sometimes from our comfort, it's just easier to whine about it or gripe about it than it is to actually make some change. So getting out of your comfort zone, especially when you're talking about a destination and we feel like there's a box or a set of rules, or like Michael mentioned, you know, the way they originally get money is usually through bed tax, but maybe they need to expand their financial portfolio in some way. Getting out of your comfort zone to get creative about that is really important. And then it's really about calculated risk. It's not just about crazy change or opportunities or something out of thin air, but being very calculated about the way you approach your tourism business and your destination is important. And that comes with partnerships sometimes as well. Research and development is another really good opportunity. And, you know, there's a lot of data companies, a lot of that out there. But I think it was Will Rogers that said, there's lies, there's damn lies, and then there's statistics. So you got to be careful about the way you look at your data and really think about research and development being a little different in how you talk to your travelers, you know, testing new audiences with all these new kinds of travelers out there, digital nomads, work from anywhere. That's a great place for some research and development to find that opportunity in those new areas. Some challenges that we have, though, is when the opportunity doesn't look right or big enough. Most people will look at an opportunity or a new idea and say, gosh, that looks like work, and pass up on it, just like Blockbuster did with Netflix. So you've got to think about what you might miss out on some good new opportunities. When you're not sure it'll work, it'll hold you back. When you think it's going to cost you, again, calculating risk. And I suggest 10% always across the board to all of my clients on research and development. Slide that 10% off and start testing some crazy opportunity and theories. And, you know, smooth seas don't make a good sailor. We need that challenge. We need that change we talked about a little. So, Michael, talk to me a little bit about some opportunities that you or one of your colleagues have taken advantage of over the years in tourism that really paid off.
Well, you know, first, I wanted to just make a side note. It's like something you touched on, those opportunities. Then we think those areas where we have has a global impact. And people say, well, how's travel now? And I say it's very robust, looking out to the next year or two. Mm-hmm. But I think one of the things we take away from these pandemics or, you know, acts of God or whatever the case may be, is looking for those opportunities. They're also generational. And if you look back at things that have hit like SARS and HIV, AIDS, and the Black Plague, those go away with time, and people forget pretty quickly. But they also quit thinking about it because there's nobody around that really experienced it. And I think taking those experiences and looking at the opportunities that come out of those are very important. But one of the things that I think you're starting to see, particularly on the leisure travel side of things, are people wanting to have an experience that they can relate to or experience for the first time or the second time, and use that as part of your marketing uh, drivers. I've been involved since I left Washington 4 or 5 years ago. Is that in the hospitality side on the residential development uh, and the lifestyle issues that go with that kind of lifestyle, whether it's a golf, tennis, pickleball, what have you. People want an experience that they can sort of touch and feel before they actually say, hey, listen, I like to live there or play there or whatever the case may be. So I think there's a lot of different opportunities between some of the different industries and travel that affects it. But, I think one of the biggest ones, you touched on it earlier. I mean, immediately across the board, the technology it's affecting the hotel industry. I mean, soon you'll be able to go in just like we do in our own homes, where you use your phone to get through the front door and you don't need a door lock, and you can check out of the hotel remotely or order room service, have a Wi-Fi system set up individually in the hotel rooms. So, and that's happening quickly.
It is. It's happening really quickly. And actually, you teed me up for a plug for my tomorrow morning keynote when we're talking about destinations and tourism in the metaverse. And so that one's going to be a really interesting one too.
There you go. Well, I saw a stat the other day where it said that there are 8 billion searches happen a day on Google. So, if people at their fingertips, if they know what they're interested in or desire or what they need help on, you can fact check that or go in. So I think people are looking for those same opportunities in travel too.
Absolutely. They're definitely looking for those opportunities. And what's interesting, I'm glad you brought that up about the search engine, is, the number 2 search engine still is Facebook. So when you think about, how you're creating these experiences and the opportunities here, and again, plugging Timothy and Catherine from Lake Charles this afternoon, because they've really taken a lot of opportunity from the social aspect on these things.
Right.
But kind of moving into that and, taking that little toe in the water doesn't necessarily cost a lot, but there's a lot of huge tech development happening. And that's where I want you guys to think. There's a lot of technology leaders that are speaking a little later. I think Dave's in the room with us from Rent Responsibly. He's got a great tech platform for short-term rentals to connect with destinations. So there's a lot of just up-and-comer thinkers. So when you hear the new opportunities, you hear the new names, you see the fresh faces, take a listen, have a cup of coffee. It would be very important to the trajectory of your destination or your business. So the other thing is, when we work with a problem, we want to recognize and categorize that problem. Like, the easiest way to calm our mind down in this is to kind of break it apart. The first thing that I love that Brene Brown talks about is, instead of blaming outside or inside, what you want to do is just take a little mental note and ask yourself, the story I'm telling myself is, my career might explode if I make the wrong decision, right? So then you break that out. So the story I'm telling myself, get that down, and then properly prioritize. If this move happens, what is this outcome going to affect? What's the most important thing for us to hit our goals? To make sure that you're prioritizing what happens, even though change that you may not want is happening, or change is slowly coming in, or you're taking some opportunities. So that mental check and categorizing is super important to being successful. Then find your posse. It's always good to find your crew, your vibe, right? So when you're looking at, again, change in tourism, whether it's slow, whether it's immediate, or whether it's opportunity, you want to ask yourself, who can sponsor this action? And that doesn't necessarily mean monetary. That may mean, who do I know that can help me with this component or that component, or I'm putting could be a new marketing campaign, could be a different kind of association in your destination, trying to get, a very niche audience together. Who do you know that can sponsor that action? Definitely, it's so important. Now the lines are so blended, from DMOs to cities to chambers. So sponsoring the action is really important to find your posse. what kind of resources do I need? And this is where you do want to get down to the nuts and bolts. Like, what's this new tech going to cost me? How do I find that money? Where is it going to be? And then who's my ride or die? You've got to have somebody, an accountability buddy. My accountability buddy is my partner, Kristen Cruz, who's talking tomorrow about meeting planners. Going to be a great session. But we're accountability buddies. We can say, hey, that's a good idea, but maybe you should think about this, because your ride or die should be really truthful to you too. I'm that kind of friend that I'm going to say, yes, your butt does look fat in those jeans, but I got a bottle of Pinot Gris. You're ready to go shop until it looks good. So that's who you find right in your group. And then just real quick on this is just kind of how I work my process in terms of planning. So if you get it out, again, the story we're telling ourselves and get that planning out, then you have a roadmap to act. And I'm not talking about writing some dusty marketing plans that sit on the shelf for 2 years. I'm talking about some actionable things. So quickly, I'll go through this. We master our message. What is the core benefit of this change, of this opportunity that we're working through? And then we work through the plan. The first thing you're going to do with your plan is set up your first big, major 3 goals. Big, hairy goals, however you want to look at them, really stretch goals. From those goals, you're going to break that down into 6-month milestones. From those milestones, you're going to break that down into 5 action steps and some accountability about when. Then once we know our goals and our plans, we're going to look at finding our posse. What's the message for them, the general and the target message? And the second bullet point I really love. And so when you think about your opportunity, your marketing, your destination, your travel business, you're going to think about how that message comes out. And are you a painkiller or are you a vitamin? And there's different kind of people that are, we're in January right now. So probably a lot of people are on those health tracks and they're in the gym right now. But the people that stay in the gym past April are your vitamin people. They're people who see opportunity, who look at things and they want to try those new things. A painkiller message is going to be a lot different. There's a whole other kind of set of people who, if their tooth hurts, they go to the dentist. But other than that, they're not as proactive about those things. So you want to think about, is your message solving a problem? Are you a painkiller brand? Are you a vitamin brand? If you're solving a problem, it's going to be quicker to the run. But if you're a vitamin brand, it's going to be longer term and healthy. And travel is super healthy. I was just saying this coming out of, I got stuck in an airport in Denver earlier last week with the weather going on. And it was just the air travel right now is so frustrating. It's ridiculous for people. So travel is healthy. Transportation is a real pain in the butt. Transportation is the next thing that we need to come together as an industry and really address. And then what kind of culture do we own? Not trying to be everything to everyone. And this happens a lot in meetings and leisure. Just these generic messages of we have a great beach or we have this, and trying to be everything to everyone. We can do families. We can do double income, no kids. We've got this, we've got that. That's fine, but pull that into niches, because it's important in a narrative psychology standpoint that your target audience recognizes themselves in your messaging. Like, oh yeah, that's me, or oh yeah, I can hang out with that girl. Where does your posse live? And when I'm talking about your crew, in terms of your message, I'm not talking about your geographic areas. I'm talking about what are their habits online? What are their normal routines? And that may be in a lot of different places. And then you're going to provide a sample. This is going to be your experience. That's going to be your visitor guides. That's going to be your marketing materials. Like, how do they envision themselves in that experience? And then you're going to go slower and earn the right to ask for a sale or for them to travel, because it's a relationship. You don't put a ring on it day one. And then collaboration, of course. Also, you're going to think about, how do you multiply your impact? What does our breakthrough look like? And I really like this one. Like, I would flip this one. What's our breakthrough look like? When do we know we've made it in this challenge, in this opportunity, in this plan? And how do we stay in action? And I think how we stay in action is also something that's, super hard to stay in when you've got change coming from different areas. And, a lot of people are thinking we're going to have a recession this year. We know things are more expensive. Michael, what are your thoughts on that? Have you heard much about what you think the tourism industry is going to look like with 2023 and a potential recession?
Well, you know what? I am very, very bullish on 2023. Everything you look at, from hotel stays and occupancy and the rates they're getting for the hotels, and travel is robust. And, despite something you talked about, one of the painkillers is you got an inflation rate at 8%, high gasoline prices are at least fluctuating up and down. You've got airlines that are packed, that the FAA, are having a hard time managing, and certain airlines are having scheduling problems because they haven't updated their technology, but it still hasn't prevented people from stop traveling. So I'm very bullish on in that regard. I think the second thing is that, and this is more of an outbound issue, but with the dollar being almost even in Europe now and across basically the globe, you got a lot of people experiencing destinations outside the U.S. as well.
Absolutely.
And I see that going on. And the last thing one of the last things I wanted to mention in this area was that there's a lot more ways to touch the customer before, after, and during the visit. And I'll give you just an example. I stayed at there's a new Marriott product in Knoxville, Tennessee, and I stayed at it this summer on driving up from Florida to Michigan. And I got a note a couple days. I was going to be there a month. I got a note a couple days later. It says, "Why don't you stop back, and here's 15% off your room charge." And I was thinking about when I drove back going through Nashville instead of Knoxville. But you know what? I took that opportunity to go back and enjoy the hotel again on the way back. So
That's awesome.
there's so many ways to break through, as you said, and multiply the impact on the business. That's it's not cutting edge things. It's not complete disruption, but at least you've got a plan to address the products and services that you provide and/or tourist visits.
Absolutely. What have you heard about? And it was real popular a couple of years ago. You don't hear as much about smart cities now.
Yeah, I think people in general, have that understanding and responsibility. You look at sustainable tourism too, which was one of the products of smart cities. And I just think while there are a lot of similarities between destinations to some degree, every destination is unique. And I think that's probably why I don't think smart cities have gone away. I think it's just some collaboration going on, but it's easier to have a digital media plan and a digital execution marketing plan than it is to try to do it for 3 or 4 different destinations.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think what I'm seeing is the buzz term's gone away, but as far as what cities are doing to make their own destinations smarter, more technologically advanced, I think that's just recategorized. I think the buzzword's gone, but sustainability is also something really important to the leisure traveler and important to the community and important to your residents, and making sure that you're on track for that.
Right.
Awesome. And then lastly, once you've done all this, we're going to burn the boats, because what other outcome do you want but the one that you've committed to? So I love this. And this is, of course, comes from more of a, Sun Tzu's Art of War type of thing. And we're not going to war, but we're on a crusade. So once you've committed to your plan, whatever that plan is, whatever idea you get from today that you've committed to doing next, don't allow another outcome. Make sure you deflect any distractions that are going to take you away from your plan, and learn how to say no, which is actually really hard for a lot of people because we're such a collaborative industry, but there's only so much we can do. You can't pour from an empty cup. So it's really important that you really fix your mindset there to take care of your distractions. And that's the piece for that part of it. But I want to take a few minutes and still keep chatting with Michael here. So Michael, like I said, we have a lot of really great fresh faces coming up in here. And I'm actually interested in, I'm just going to throw you a wild question. I didn't even tell you I was going to ask you, but because we're talking about this tomorrow. So I'm one of those who's really committed to what's the next tech, what's the next thing. As a matter of fact, we're launching a new podcast in February called Tech, Travel, and Twang. And I'm sure if you've heard me this long, you know where the twang comes from. This Texas accent kind of sticks with us. But as far as the metaverse goes, and I think a lot of people, I'm going to tee that up just a second. As far as the metaverse goes, I think a lot of people, because Facebook renamed themselves to Meta. It's not owned by Facebook. They were just clever enough to, wedge themselves into something that's been going on a long time. But where would you see, or what would you think destinations should look at? Should that be like live visitor guides? Do you think it's something they should even be thinking about yet? Or do you think there's other priorities?
Well, I think there's a lot of opportunity out there. I think one of the things that, I feel that it would be helpful is particularly at the DMO and the marketing level, for the hotels or DMOs, whatever the case may be, is really have a smart social media marketing plan and then a social media plan to distribute that. And I think sometimes we get confused between the two. It's like there's so many ways to capture people's participation in their own lives and the lives of others, whether that be Facebook, whether that be Pinterest. You go through the right, but how are you going to use that in your strategy so then you can say, hey, this is working or it's not? And I think the two, it just gets blended over. It's like, oh, here products and services get blended in with the strategy. And I think we're going to hear some people talk about that later the next day or two. But I think having that strategy in place to capture the experience and then one to market the experiences of your destination and product or travel. I mean, you look at the rental car. I mean, the rental car situation, if you can get a rental car, it's like driving a Lamborghini now, and it's like expensive, even if you can get one. And let's say a DMO is working with the local Hertz franchise at the airport. It's like, we know you guys are short on cars. Can we help you, distribute availability, at least through our media networks and that kind of thing? Because down here, I'm in Southwest Florida now, in the Naples area and Fort Myers, and we had a hurricane, a big one, a bad one, and it wiped out Fort Myers Beach. I mean, there's no two ways. It was horrible. But you know what? People are still flocking down here, and they can't get a rental car.
Right. Yeah.
So it's like those subtle little things that it doesn't take much to help stimulate people's stress once they get into the destination as well.
Absolutely on that transportation point. I'm really glad you made the point about strategy versus tactics. I think that's something else that just a normal, in our normal everyday thing, it's real easy to kind of get those two confused and stay down in the weeds and the tactics, but the strategy is super important. And, also coming, like you mentioned, people flocking, there was, the whole trend of what they called revenge travel, because we've been locked in our homes for so long during COVID that kind of boomed as well. But now then that begs the question again of starting up a new conversation over and over again about over tourism. And that's where it comes to, city planning, city strategy. I think that's really important. I know there was a Skift article recently that was really illuminating about how destinations are reinventing themselves. And a lot of that focused on Jackson Hole, which was, in the day, a very high end, expensive place to go, but it became really popular and became kind of over tourism in that respect. And the residents weren't ready. They weren't primed. They weren't taken care of that way to actually share the strategy with them. So I think that's something that's important when we're talking about the strategy of these destinations or the strategy of your tourism product, is that part that we talked about a little earlier about finding your posse also includes your community, includes your city council, includes people that you may not normally think of marketing to, but you need collaboration from, so that as your product evolves, you're ready for that, whether that product is evolving technologically, whether that product is, evolving demonstrably.
I think, to that point is that you look at the Hurricane Ian that hit Fort Myers Beach in September, and essentially Fort Myers Beach had been sort of the same way for 40 or 50 years. It became the charm of the destination. There were mom and pop and non-franchise hotels and rental units and Airbnbs, and the beach is right there. One of the few places, believe it or not, in Florida, you can actually go and participate in the beach, with a few other exceptions. But the problem we have now is a lot of those people didn't have insurance in their homes. They were older homes or didn't have the proper amount, and they're wiped out. So now big companies are coming in and gobbling up all the land that's, unusable at this point. And it's like, how do you market that strategy at the destination level to correspond with the other products in there? It's like, that's why people came to the beach. It was kitschy. It was fun.
Yeah. And there's only so much product we only have so much real estate. I think that's something also I'm interested in exploring tomorrow, with expanding your real estate through a virtual experience that still benefits your community.
Yeah, and I'll just make one last point about that.
Mhm.
With the hotel loss, and just as a real live example, in Fort Myers Beach, the surrounding areas are packed. The Airbnbs are full. You can put a 3-bedroom house on the market and essentially get what you want to in January through April within reason. So it's there's a huge demand out there.
Yes, there's a huge demand, and I think it's going to be, just the appetite's going to continue and continue, and it's just really important, to stay curious when we talk about change and being a responsible disruptor. I think it's important to keep your mind open, stay very curious, stay in your community, keep your shoulders down, listen to everything you can listen to, and form a really, really strong strategy, I think.
Yeah, I think one. Well, I know we're sort of running out of time, but I made a note of something you said about disruptors in creating a product or a service that displaces the existing market leaders and better positions your product or organization. And I think that's really true. And it doesn't have to displace the whole thing. It could be 4 or 5 little changes that ends up being a big impact at the destination or the hotel or travel product.
Absolutely. I think small changes, consistent small changes build big bridges. So
Yeah,
I love
really
that.
good point.
Awesome. Well, I think we're going to give a little buffer between our session and our next session. I just want to tee that up for you guys. Alex and Annie, if you aren't listening to them on your podcast, you definitely should. Alex and Annie, the Real Women of Vacation Rentals, will be hosting a live panel here starting at the top of the hour in just a few minutes. And of course, just a reminder that the entire DestiCon is on demand for 30 days after the program. So if you want to go back, listen to something, because I know we started really early this morning. So if you want to catch the beginning of Michael and I, you can do that on demand as soon as those sessions are over, and you can experience the entire DestiCon as you wish. So you guys make sure to go into the sessions and show everybody some love. Keep your energy up. It's going to be a great long day, and I'll see you in another session. I'll see you this afternoon in my session. Don't waste a recession with a guest. Awesome. Thank you all. We'll see you soon.
Bye-bye.